Hey folks, Jackdaw here. It's been a long wait for Fable. 14 years since the last mainline game. 7 years since Playground Games first took the wheel, and now people are getting nervous. The release window slipped. It missed Xbox's 2025 showcase entirely, and Reddit is full of theories, breakdowns, and even people tracking how many £240 whiskey rounds the devs are buying in Leamington Spa. So is the development taking too long? Is Fable in trouble? Or is this exactly what rebuilding one of gaming's quirkiest fantasy RPGs was always going to look like? Let's talk about what's really happening with Fable's development and why you might not need to panic just yet. To really understand where all the nerves are coming from in 2025, we've got to go back to where this all started. Lionhead shut its doors in 2016. Fable Legends was cancelled midway through production, a live service multiplayer experiment that, in hindsight, never really reflected what Fable was all about in the first place. And after that, nothing. Albion was mothballed. Until 2018, when Eurogamer reported that Microsoft had quietly handed Fable to Playground Games, a studio with zero RPGs on their CV, but an open world reputation thanks to Forza Horizon. But here is where things have been missed or misinterpreted, because Playground Games were not handed any half-built Fable project. They inherited nothing, no assets, no old code, no pipeline, no role-playing game division. They started purely from zero. This was a clean slate. A brand new studio division for Playground Games, brand new systems, a brand new Fable altogether, and that's exactly why, right from day one, this was never going to be a quick one. And even with experience, Fable was always going to be uniquely difficult in its own right. This isn't grimdark fantasy, it's fairy tale satire colliding with moral consequence. You can go from noble hero to real estate tyrant within 15 minutes. It's British absurdity wrapped in sincerity, and getting that right isn't just about good writing or map design, it's layered morality systems, dynamic economies, branching dialogue to some extent, property management and relationship mechanics, all while keeping the whole thing funny without breaking the world around it. That balancing act is what makes Fable, and few RPGs ever come close to even touching that. This is why Playground didn't just need time to scale up their technology, they needed time to scale up their entire creative culture. So yes, it has been a long time indeed. Internal development kicked off around 2018. It was officially then announced in 2020. At one point, 2025 looked like the ideal target for release. That has now currently slipped into 2026. And then, just to stoke more fan anxiety, Fable skipped Xbox's 2025 showcase entirely. By the time this game finally lands, we're already staring down an 8-year, maybe more dev cycle. And on the surface, that sounds absolutely terrifying. But if we actually just zoom out and compare that to the landscape of concurrent RPGs, it's actually weirdly normal. Horizon Zero Dawn took nearly 7 years when Guerrilla pivoted from FPSs to RPGs. God of War's Reboot lived in that 6 to 8 year window, and even Cyberpunk, for all of its chaos, had a similar reboot timeframe once it pivoted from its original design. The difference is, those studios were already sitting on RPG pipelines, so this isn't a case of a lost studio delaying forever, it's a team learning how to build an RPG while carrying one of Xbox's biggest franchises on their back. And we don't even have to speculate on this part because we have an ex-developer come out and say it themselves. Juan Fernandez, who worked on Fable before leaving Playground, spoke pretty bluntly about exactly why this reboot has moved so slowly. In his words, Playground were incredibly smart, hugely ambitious, but simply didn't have people who had made RPGs before. And that is kind of the entire story right there. Playground didn't know how to make RPG systems. That's your third-person combat, dialogue trees, inventory management systems, skill trees, morality systems. None of it existed when they started. Which means even though development technically began in 2018, a huge chunk of the early years was spent building the studio before they could even start building Fable. And then, as Playground figured out their pipeline, they started filling in the gaps. In 2022, Amy Spuddles joined as a senior producer, one of the few Lionhead veterans actively working on this reboot. A bit of original Fable DNA back in the room. Narrative-wise, Anna McGill joined as lead writer with experience on Control, Dishonored and Division 2. She led story development for over 3 years before stepping down in 2023 after the big gameplay reveal, but left on good terms, stating that Playground has assembled a heroically talented team. That narrative handover continued with Andrew Walsh, previously senior writer on Horizon Forbidden West, associate narrative director on Horizon Call of the Mountain, and former writer on Fable Legends. So again, a good mix of modern actual RPG experience and actual history with Fable. And then in 2024, just last year, Playground made arguably their smartest move, bringing in Eidos Montreal to actively support development. That's devs who have made Deus Ex, Guardians of the Galaxy, which was actually surprisingly really good, and Tomb Raider. These are people who understand RPG systems, choices, dialogue, player agency, all the stuff that lives under Fable's weird humour. Their arrival suggests that this was all about bolstering the systems underneath it all. Which brings us now to where a lot of fan anxiety stirs: the current 2025 job listings. Because even after all of this, Playground Games are still hiring, and these aren't just polished roles, some of these are actually leadership positions. Amongst the most eye-catching listings, you've got an associate production director, lead gameplay designer, lead gameplay animator, not just small hires. The kind of people you generally want to lock in during your pre-production stages, not this far along. Alongside that, there's still plenty of senior hirings happening in systems, VFX, cinematics, and engineering. None of which screams we're wrapping up in the next year. Now, to be clear, big AAA projects often do hire late. Polish phases scale differently. Some of this could be filling in gaps as they hit final production milestones. But yes, recruiting leads in 2025 does raise fair questions about how much iteration's actually happening behind the scenes, speaking to just how difficult this project has been structurally. So if you are sitting there wondering if it is slightly alarming that, Fable is hiring huge roles in 2025, it's certainly not nothing. But it's not necessarily disaster either. It is just a reflection of how complicated this reboot has been to land. Especially when you are somebody like Playground and you want to do it just right. And I personally think this is where people sometimes forget what this reboot actually is. Because this isn't Lionhead's Fable anymore, and it was never going to be. That team is long gone. While some of the people do remain at Playground, they are not here to copy Fable 2 beat by beat. They have instead been handed the freedom and equally the pressure to recreate Albion to their own liking. To figure out what Fable now means in 2025, 2026, or whatever year this game comes out in, without Peter Molyneux over-promising the moon. And honestly, after how messy Fable 3 got, this might be exactly what the franchise actually needs. Now, of course, the community has found its own way to track Fable's development, and that is through the sheer amounts of whiskey the team have been drinking. Last year, a Reddit post popped up from a local in Leamington Spa, where Playground is based, claiming they had seen some of the developers out drinking, dropping £240 on midweek double whiskies. The theory being that they were celebrating some kind of milestone. Content lock? Maybe. Production wrapping? Most unlikely given the state we're in now. Realistically though, these milestones happen all of the time. A vertical slice is finished. VO got completed on time. Narrative lock? Heck, any one of those is worth raising a glass to. And after 7 to 8 years on a single project, you take your wins where you can. So where does this leave us now, besides a few fun Reddit conspiracies to pass the time? Well, Fable is still coming. 2026 is now the initial target, and yes, it has been a longer road than anyone expected. The studio has been built from scratch, the team has shifted, leadership has changed hands, but even now, to me at least, everything we've seen so far still feels quintessentially Fable. Heck, just having Richard Ayoade and Matt King in Albion is enough to increasingly raise my high hopes. But this is not a reboot for the sake of it. It is a team trying to pull off the hardest trick. Rebuild a beloved world without just recreating it. And seeing just exactly where that is going to land in the RPG landscape these days. As always, I will be watching the Next Steps Playground make, formerly Next Gameplay Reveal, whenever that's going to be. It most likely will be the Game Awards, no pressure, which is later this year, to also then just following on those Reddit threads, seeing if there has been any more large purchases of whiskey shots midweek. So if you are unreasonably as invested in this franchise as I am, do consider subscribing and staying tuned as we continue to follow on for what is next for Fable. Either way, do let me know all of your thoughts on this next reboot of Fable as Playground Games diligently handle it. What are your thoughts on its development? Have you seen any other fun, crazy Reddit threads you care to share with me? Let me know all of your thoughts and if you think Playground Games will do a cracking job with reinventing Albion once more. Now, you are already in the right place for the moment we get more information on this game, but until the next one, I have been Jackdaw, and I should go. Whoa, 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 whoa.